Hey, this is Donnie, and in this live video, I've got some questions that I'm going over that I got on the channel, and I'm going to be answering some of those. Some are about primer sealer, some spray guns, paint problems. Quite a few questions I've got that I'm going to answer. And then after I get done reading those, if you have any questions, you can leave a comment on here live, and I'll see it over here on the side. So first of all, I hope you all had a great 4th of July. I enjoyed my time. I went to Bartlesville, Oklahoma. That's where one of my sons live now. And me and my other son went and visited him and spent the 4th there. Had a great time. Drove back today. And yeah, so had a good time. I hope all of you did as well. So yeah, we've got a lot to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with some of these questions. And I'll have to check back. I can see this screen, but I have to click out of it to read the comments. So I'll come back and forth some, to see if I have any questions. But first, I'm going to try to answer the questions I have on here. And also, I'm still kind of having a few problems with the internet, trying to get this all right. If you are online, be sure to let me know if the sound is okay in video and if I'm not dragging that digital sound and all that. So, I never know for sure on this end, so let me know. But I'm going to go ahead and switch screens here for a little bit and answer some of these questions. First question I have is from Fred Jones. And he says, "What's up, Donnie? I have a couple of questions. I'm doing another door. This one, I burned through the clear, through the base, and to the primer. And the primer is exposed. How would I prep that for repair? It's smooth. Do I have to dig in the area with 220 grit, etc.? My second is, I want to try to use my little Awada Neo airbrush. How much reducer should I put in the paint to make it flow good through my airbrush? Let me know, or let me know. I love the channel." Well, Fred, as far as reducing the paint, you'd reduce it like you normally would. I don't know I really don't know what line of paint you're using. I mean, they're all different, but I just follow the same recommendations that you use to paint it. That would it'd be the same. So I wouldn't really worry about that. Just mix it. A lot of them's like 1-to-1 or whatever. I know like a Deltron and some of those like PPG, but I don't know for sure what you're using. But he did. Fred did send me a video of this, and this is where he was block sanding to had some imperfection. He's blocking it out, and it actually sanded through the clear coat, and they're about that big. And there's a spot about quarter size that looked like to me, or maybe just a little bit bigger, that it's primer. So what do you do to fix that? And no, I mean, it looked like you got it blocked out nice and smooth. I would not use 220. I mean, you've already got it nice and leveled out. Reason you would use 220 is like to begin with, like if it was some imperfection you're just trying to get out, it's just faster. But if you already have it there, blocked out nice and smooth, I wouldn't use those coarser grits. But the best answer I'm gonna have, because it's in the kind of the center of the door, and it's really kind of hard to blend, into the panel without clear coating the whole panel. You can do it, but it's not, most paint companies recommend clear coating the whole panel. So it may be, I mean, if you're wanting a really nice job, you may have to just go ahead and sand the rest of that panel with 800 grit, then go over it with the gray scuff pad to get the hard to get areas, and then go ahead and blend that paint in. And I would use a regular paint gun. I mean, your area is about that big, the total area. So I would probably just use a regular airbrush. May be too hard. I mean, you could do it, but it may be maybe kind of difficult with an area that big. But I would just blend that paint in. When I'm talking about blending, you kind of kick it out on the ends, so it kind of transitions from the new paint into the old paint. That way, you can't really see where the blend begins and ends. And then after I got that primer spot covered, I had full hiding, then I'd come back and just put a couple coats of clear coat on the whole door. And, that you may not was wanting to do that much work, but that would be the best thing to do. That way you don't have any of your edges trying to burn out on you later on, where you can kind of see where that clear is giving out on you, So that's what most paint. Now, we do sometimes do what you call solvent blend, where you kind of blend into it and not paint the whole panel. That's usually like on a small dog leg area, or maybe an A pillar or something like that. You can get by with it pretty easy because it's such a small area and hard to see. But yeah, I would just go ahead and just sand it down real fast with 800 and clear coat that whole door after I blended it back in. Now, I kind of had a question about this last time I'm going to hit on too, talking about how do you know that primer spot covered? Sometimes it's hard to tell, under normal lights or whatever. And what we will do, see how our blend looks, see if it's modeling or anything like that after we think we've got a gun, but a flashlight would probably work too. And with the lights off, shine it on there and look at it like that. Sometimes that will show you a lot of things that you can't see in the normal light. And that'll show you maybe, that little spot might look like a stain. It might look like the primer bled through, but that'll kind of help you see that, see things that you normally wouldn't. So I hope that helps. Okay, I'm going to switch back over here. See if everything's going right. If you can hear me clearly and it sounds good, no problems, let me know. So. Okay, we'll go ahead and go to the next question. I've got a couple of them. Let's see. Okay, next question. I'm going to hit on this one real fast. But Ron Butts says, sounds great here. Talk about cheap guns. Now, I've got two in mind that I'm going to talk about that I think are really, really good guns, for the cost. And the first one is a Phoenix, I think, FX3000. It's made by Sharp. And we have used those. It's been a while. I haven't used one in a while, but they spray pretty good. We usually used a 1.3 or 1.4, and they sprayed really good. And they're under $150, 120 to 140, I think. And I know that may sound kind of high, but when you look at that compared to some of the close to $1,000 guns, it doesn't sound so expensive. But those are good guns for the cost. I have seen some guns that just was real cheap and they just didn't work real good. The fan pattern wouldn't open up real wide. So, I wouldn't use just anything, but that one is a good one for $150 range. And another one I'm pretty impressed about is for the cost is the 3M gun. It's a composite gun. It's not metal. It's made out of plastics and things like that. And you have to use the 3M cups with it because it doesn't have a cup. You use the disposable cups. But it has different tips, and you can, you just change a tip and you can change between a 1.3, 1.4, 1.6 or whatever. All you have to do is take the old tip off and put the new one on. And if it starts not spraying very well, or it gets dirty or something, you just take that one off, throw it away, and put a new one on. And really, those flue tips are not that high. I think they're $5-6 a piece, which is not that expensive. And you get quite a few uses out of one. And but the great thing about it, if it's if it gets where it's not spraying that good, just change it out and you got like a new gun again. So that's the two that I would recommend for a cheaper gun that I think does spray really well. All right, let's move on to the next one. I'm scrolling the comments. Okay, I small a SWAT. I think some of these YouTube names I really have to look at, but says, hello Don, love your channel. I have a question. What would you do if you sprayed base and then you found small dust and you just rub down and just dab the spot with a brush, a paintbrush, and then clear coat? Would that be okay? And that's actually a good question and a good point, because really through the whole process, I mean, you're making sure everything's clean, and that can go on until the clear coat. So with your primer sealer and your base coat, if you have an imperfection, like a piece of dust, if it'll just knock off, yeah, you can do that. You can just knock it off and keep going. If it's actually got sprayed and embedded into the base coat, you might have to let it flash off and dry a little bit. And then, with like some 1500 or something, just real lightly sand on it to kind of sand that imperfection out, sand that piece of dirt out. And then if you do that, you want to dust some more base coat on there. So you had to sand that out just a little bit. And then I would just dust, a little bit more base coat. You don't have to, if you're already done with the base coat, you don't have to, come back and do a whole nother coat. Just kind of blend that area in, and that will be fine. And you can do that with the primer sealer, with the base coat. But once you get to the clear coat, you can't really do that. You can't really mess with the clear coat or sand on it, or, about the only thing you can do that. And if you're painting, you really need some tweezers. I mean, that's come in handy. You can grab a piece of hair or lint. I've had to do that before, and you can do that with the clear. You just don't want to touch the clear, but that's things you can do. Until you start spraying the clear coat. The clear coat is real tacky, sticky, and you're not going to be able to touch it at all. So yeah, I would if it's just a piece that's kind of sitting on top, that sounds like that might be what it is. You talk about just kind of rubbing it down. If it didn't take any paint off, yeah, I'd just knock it off. Make sure you're wearing gloves, because you don't want the oils in your hand to get on there. But if you knock that down and it didn't have didn't get into the base coat, you could probably just clear coat on top of that. But I would probably rather, if you do have to sand a little bit to get that level, I'd probably rather just blend a little spot back in rather than to use a paintbrush. But you probably could, but it'd probably be a little bit noticeable, because whenever you put something on with a paintbrush, it doesn't atomize it. Doesn't really atomize it like a spray gun does. So it'll probably be a little bit darker, because all the metallics, kind of hidden if you're going to use a paintbrush. So anyway, I hope that helps answer your question. Okay, the next question is, I have no problem with using 2K primer, but the sealer, for some reason, I just cannot get it to lay out. I'm using a finish line gun with a 1.3 tip and was told that would be the correct tip for the sealer. I get a good wet coat. I have too much product and not a good smooth coat. I'm not sure if I would rather be better off using a 1K sealer. I think what, sounds like to me, like sealers can be a little sensitive, especially it's kind of been hot lately. There's a couple reasons. The first one, I'll say, make sure you're using the right reducer or catalyst. However this product's set up. Sometimes some products is the catalyst that's kind of set up for the temperatures, and some products it's the reducer. But make sure it is for the correct temperature, because yeah, that primer sealer, it dries kind of fast. And if it sits on top and it didn't have time to flow out, it's going to give it a rough texture. And that could be your problem, is that the reducer or catalyst is, for a cooler weather, when it should be for a warmer weather. So that's one thing. Another thing, if you're spraying too far back, ideally you want to try to get used to, 6 to 8 inches. That's about the distance you want to spray. And that's that will allow it to land on the surface, flow out, and not be dry. If you're too far back, that product, that sealer, it's actually drying and kind of dry when it hits the surface, which causes kind of a rougher surface. So that could be a problem, that you're too far back, or it could be that you got too much air pressure, and that's just causing too much overspray coming back and falling on there and kind of drying before it hits, which is causing a rough surface. So check those 3 things. 1.3 or 1.4. That is what's recommended for most brands of sealers that I've used. So that should be good there. And if you're still having a problem, you might try 1.4, which would put it on a little bit wetter. But I think it's going to probably be one of those 3 things that's causing your problem. So check those, and then if you're still having problems, come back and ask again. I'll see if I can better answer your question. Let's see. Scrolling through these questions. Okay, Dewan McQueen says, please help. I have a Technica Pro light. I do not have a paint booth, and so I will spray outside. What cap and gun setting would you recommend for spray base and clear? And again, for base and clear, even your sealer, a 1.3 or 1.4, and that's just going to be a painter's preference. Probably if I didn't paint all the time, I would probably go ahead for 1.3, because you're going to have a little bit more control than with like a 1.4. So if you kind of hesitate somewhere where you would normally get a run, maybe that would help out a little bit. You just have a little bit more control. If you're finding that just isn't going on as flowing out like you want it to, then you might try 1.4. But I usually recommend for people starting out, 1.3, and try to maybe 8 inches. And as you get more comfortable, you can move into the 6-inch range. But being 8 inches away using a 1.3, that's going to give you a little more control. And then as you become more comfortable, you can start painting a little closer. Now the painting outside, I haven't really done it. I know people have, they painted outside. A lot of people will kind of convert their garages in, they'll hang some curtains and stuff. I've never, well, I have painted outside, but not cars. I worked for a trucking company one time, and I painted all their equipment and some of their trailers and stuff like that. And of course, it was a different type of paint. It was a more of a industrial type paint, and we'd paint those outside. And we used pressure pots too, which is kind of a different deal. You can mix like 2.5 gallons at one time, and do a lot more spraying. But you're still going to want still going to want to follow the recommendations for the the paint, the air pressures, the 1.3 or 1.4, and go from there. And again, a lot of these questions, I really don't know what kind of paint you're using, and I'm not familiar with all of them. I'll be the first to admit I don't know everything for sure, but I am most familiar with like PPG, Deltron. That's what I used to use. And then also use some Shop Line, which is a line of PPG, and the waterborne, the Enviro base. Years ago, I used some DuPont. We used to use their acrylic enamels, and we switched out of that. But probably the PPG line is the most familiar I am. And I'm not saying it's the best. There's a lot of good paint companies out there, but I just haven't used a lot of the other ones that much. I've always kind of stuck with PPG. So, but yeah, if you can find whoever you buy the paint from, the parts store, if you go in there and buy the paint, if you ask them for the technical data sheet, they should provide that to you, and it kind of help you out with that too. What tip is recommended, and all that stuff. So, and the mix, how's it mixed? 4-to-1, 3-to-1, or whatever it is. You'll kind of want to find all that, and it'll give you all that, the tip size and things like that. So I would recommend seeing if you can find that and look it over it. And the base and clear, I use the same one. I've used a 1.3 and I've used a 1.4. Both of them will work for base or clear. So, all right. Let's see, I'm scrolling down. Let me go back over here and where I can see. Okay, well, that's good to know. Sounds good. And how many coats of urethane primer do you recommend on a job? Let me answer a few of these other questions. I'll come back to that. Is a good question, because you're talking about primer surfacer, I'm assuming. So I'll talk about that in just a minute. Thanks for asking. Let's see. Okay, is surfacer the same as sealer? And that's no. And anytime you spray something with primer surfacer, also called primer filler, fill primer, it has to be sanded. That is not designed to, just spray something on top of it. You won't have good adhesion. So if you're using primer surfacer, you're going to have to sand that. Now, sealer, that's just to put on right before you paint. You've already sanded it, masked it off, got it in the booth ready to paint, and then you're going to apply primer sealer. And what that is for, it does have some adhesion properties, and it kind of helps with rock chips and things like that. But one of the main things primer sealers for is just to kind of seal, kind of hide everything that's underneath. Let's say you're painting a hood and you had 3 spots that you'd primed and blocked out with primer surfacer. Well, those 3 spots are going to be whatever color primer. It might not be the same ground coat as what the car is. So if you just try to cover that with paint, especially metallics or your high translucent, it's going to take a lot of coats to try to hide that primer under there. And when you pull it outside, and it might look good in the booth, but you pull it outside, and you might kind of see those 3 spots still, where you're actually kind of seeing through that metallic. and it might look like a stain or like it bled through, something like that. So that's really what primer sealer's for. As you put that on, it gives you a nice, even, uniform ground coat to where everything will match. Its main purpose is for matching. You know, you don't have to use it. It's not required. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it, but you can spray without using, you know, primer sealer, but it's really going to save you time and money, you know, because you can put 1 to 2 coats of that on, and, you know, that's good. And you might spend a lot more money with paint trying to cover up what's underneath. So I recommend it, and I usually use it on my jobs. Now, like I said, other paint companies may have different ways. I know some paint companies, you know, they actually make the primer surfacer, you know, the different gray shades where it is the correct shade, you know, after it's sanded and blocked. So there's different ways, but it is not the same. Surfacer is to be sanded, sand scratches from the 220 grit or whatever. You're going to put that on there. You're going to block it off. And that's what, so you're just putting something on there to block off to get that smooth surface. That's what primer surfacer is. And sealer, of course, you don't sand it. You just spray it right before you paint, let it flash 15 minutes or whatever. Come straight on top of that with your paint, and then you're clear. So between you don't sand the sealer, and then you don't sand the base coat, and then of course the clear coat, you're done. So hope that helps answer your question on that one. Let's see. Okay. Dean Gale says, so what grit is the gray scuff pad? Also, after you prime, do you sand again before you paint? And if so, what grit? That kind of falls into the last question. It depends what kind of primer you're talking about. If it's primer surfacer, I mean, you do have to, you know, it's designed to block out to get that level surface. But if you're talking about primer sealer, you know, you don't have to sand. You apply that and put the base coat straight on top of that. And what grit is the scuff pad? It's the gray is designed where you can put just clear coat only. I mean, it's if you're blending into a panel, you can hit it with the gray scuff pad. The maroon one's a little bit too coarse. So I would say probably, I mean, I don't know for sure. It's kind of color coded rather than grit coated on those scuff pads, but probably 8 to 1,000 on the gray. And the maroons are probably around, you know, 5 or 6. You know, I'm just kind of guessing at that. But on some of your metallics and stuff like that, if you try to hit the clear coat where you're not painting, you know, where you're just clear coating on top of it, you know, the maroon a lot of times will, you know, you might be able to see through those scratches because it's a little bit too coarse. But if you're painting, if you're going to paint the whole panel, you can use the maroon. I mean, that's going to cut it a little faster, sand it a little faster, and, you know, that way it'll speed your time up a little bit. So the maroon is for if you're going to paint, you know, you're going to spray paint on top of that, and the gray is if you're just going to clear coat only. So and what grit for paint? Anywhere between 400 and 600. Like if you got a part and you're just going to sand it down and you're going to paint it, anywhere between 400 and 600 is kind of your final sanding area. You know, with your waterborns, you might even go a little finer than that. You know, they're a little more sensitive to things like that. But 4 to 6, depending on how you're sanding. I mean, I use a DA and use one of them soft pads. Or, you know, if you're sanding by hand, you know, it all kind of follows the same thing. If I'm sanding by hand, I'm probably going to go with 400 because, you know, it takes a little longer, takes a little more effort, so that'll do it a little bit faster. On DA, you know, every shop's going to be different, but I usually use like 500. You know, I just kind of go in the middle and use 500, and I've not really had any problems with that. It's always came out good with the jobs that we've done. So anyway, I hope that helps answer your question. Let's look over here now. Okay, now I'm going to get back to this other question. How many coats of urethane primer do you recommend on a job? Let's see. Okay. Did you say how many coats of 2K urethane primer surfacer you put on? If it's primer surfacer, this is a good one because this is where a lot of people mess up. You know, that's one of them things like, you know, if a little bit does good, you know, a whole bunch is going to do better. And a lot of people think like that. But if you actually put too much primer on there, that can cause a lot of problems. You know, a lot of times you try to put it on real heavy, and then you end up putting too much on too fast, you know, and that causes a lot of things like solvent popping, because that primer dries from the outside in. So it kind of seals off the top where those solvents can't escape. Well, eventually it's going to escape. And a lot of times it's already kind of started to dry when it does that. So the air bubble, you know, it'll work out, and then you'll be like a pinhole right there, a deep pinhole. It can also cause it to crack and things like that. So again, most of the primers I've used say 2 to 3 coats. You know, and I wouldn't put a whole lot more on. If you do need to put more on, I mean, that the imperfections are that bad, I would go ahead and put the 2 to 3, put those on, block it out, and if I still needed some more, then I'd do the process again. Then I'd put 2 to 3, you know, more coats on, and then block it out. But you're going to run into troubles, you know, with most primers. Again, you know, there's so many products out there, I don't know them all, but most of them, if you put too much on too fast, let's say 6, 7, you know, layers on there, you're probably going to run into problems where you're trapping solvents in there, you know, and that's going to lead to, you know, some other bigger issues, you know. And also, you know, be sure and allow the flash time, whatever that technical data sheets for that certain product, if it says allow it to set 5 to 10 minutes, you know, be sure that you wait that time, you know, for that to dry. And another thing is also, like, now it's not going to be a big deal because it's been hot, but that's kind of like 70s, you know, they kind of do all that at 70 degrees, you know, 72 or somewhere around there. So, I mean, if it's a lot colder in the shop you're working at, you're going to have to extend, you know, that dry time. If it's a lot hotter, you know, it might not be quite as long. So that's kind of just a idea to go by, you know, is to start from, but the temperature is going to affect that. Hello. I'm doing good. So this is my just Q&A. So, well, welcome. Yeah, glad you all made it. If you have any questions, you know, be sure and ask. I think I've answered most of the ones that I had I had on the channel that I was going to answer, but lots of things about primer. You know, I've get lots of questions about that through the years I have. You know, so. Oh, okay, I got you. I should have realized that. Yeah, this is your first Q&A. So, well, welcome. I'm glad you made it. You know, and I'm kind of new to the Q&A too. Kind of been struggling through this the last couple of weeks to kind of get it all down, and you know how I'm going to do it. And you know, I'm not the most internet savvy to begin with, so let's see. What about humidity? What humidity you would not shoot primer in the garage? That does affect it some too, especially with your waterborne. It's more sensitive to the humidity, but yeah, that's gonna affect it some. You know, it's definitely will affect it, and then just will affect the way it sprays some. You know, if in question, you know, most products have a flash time, and then they have a window. Well, you know, the flash time, you might say, you know, it needs to wait at least 5 minutes before you put another coat on. And it may have a window, like epoxy has a real long window, epoxy primer. So it has, you know, you need to wait, you know, this long before you put another coat on or top coat it. But you can, you know, you have a window of 72 hours. So within 72 hours, you still got that adhesion, you know, the chemical adhesion. So you're safe to put something on top of it. After 72 hours, you know, it hardens up, it cures, and then, you know, it won't stick to it again. You know, it won't stick if you put a coating on there. So that's why you got to come back after, if you wait longer than 72 hours, and you're going to have to scuff it before, you know, you paint it to give it the mechanical adhesion. So yeah, all that affects it. And you know, the way the metallic lays and all that, you know, it's gonna affect that just a little bit. Heat and humidity and all that. So Man, it's been hot and humid here. Like I said, I don't know if he's here at the beginning, but I went spent the 4th with my son Jacob. We went down there to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and spent the 4th there. Had a good time. Drove back today, but yeah, just everywhere. It's very hot and humid. You know, it's just it's hot in here. I have a little air conditioner in here, but you know, it kind of makes it's kind of loud. I didn't know that would mess with the sound, so turned it off for a little bit. But uh, yeah, this heat and humidity can make it a little bit challenging when you're spraying. You know, just like the person that was talking about the sealer, primer sealer coming out kind of rough, you know, that could be a part of that. You know, using sometimes it's just so hot, you know, it's just going to dry before it ever hits the surface. So you got to really put it on wet. But make sure, you know, on these hot days or cold days, you know, that you're using the correct reducers and correct catalyst for the temperature that it is. You know, they've got you know, fast dry, you know, for colder days. They've got slow for hotter days, and that can make a big difference, especially if you're using a you know, the mid range on a real hot day, or even a fast on a hot day. You're not going to be able to spray that at all. It's just not going to look good. It's going to, you know, stuff's going to be dry before it ever hits the surface and just look like a sandpaper almost. So. All right. Well, it's 7:30 and I don't see any other questions, so I guess we'll go ahead and cut this one or shut this down. And if there's any other questions, I'll wait just a minute. If not, I will end this stream and we'll see you next Saturday. So, okay. Well, I really do thank all of you for coming on, watching this video. If you have any questions, you know, be sure and ask down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Let's see. Do you have any pets? Oh, yeah. No, I don't. I mean, yeah, parvo. I've noticed some dogs die parvo. Yeah, you got to watch that because I think that's whatever it is, you know, kind of stays in the ground or whatever for a long time, you know, really long time. Let's see, I have a couple of pinholes with rust starting. Would I be better to sandblast the area and then go with epoxy primer or body filler? You know, a lot of your restoration jobs, you know, like that type of stuff. I mean, yeah, if you got access to a sandblaster, I'd definitely sand it, because a lot of times that rust, you know, even if it's just surface rust and it's not rusting all the way through, you know, it's kind of pitted, and you can sand on that, but it's not going to get inside of those places like that. So yeah, if you got a little spot blaster you can blast it with, you know, then I'd probably go ahead and put some epoxy on it, and then you can come back. Now, if you're going to put your body filler on top of the epoxy, be sure you scuff it up before you do, just to give it a little adhesion. But epoxy, you can put body filler on top of epoxy. In fact, some car manufacturers recommend that. You know, they recommend that you do apply epoxy before doing any body filler. Most of your premium body fillers, though, they do have zinc in them, and they are designed for corrosion protection and all that as well. So either way, you know, that's just kind of a preference of, you know, which one you put on first. If I use epoxy prime hood and wait to paint it later, do I just need to scuff the epoxy before laying base clear? Yeah, you know, like a lot of epoxies, I don't know which one you're using for sure, but most of the ones I've used, you know, they've got a 72-hour window, meaning if you do it within 72 hours, you know, you can come back and put your base coat on. And then, but yeah, if you wait, let's say a couple of weeks later, or, you know, whenever, yeah, you can come back and scuff that, you know, just to give it a little bit of tooth. And then you can come back and, you know, start with your base coat. Let's see. Any idea on what sand blast media to use? Glass, maybe. You know, I'm not real sure what they use. I know the sand they don't recommend anymore, you know, because of the silica in it. I'm trying to think, man. That's a question you got me on that one. I know we got some. It's black. I don't know what it is though. just for a spot blaster. I'm not talking about a regular, like sand blasting, but for that spot blaster, which we'll use for plug welds, to clean them out and stuff like that. Man, I'd have to look. I'm not sure on that. I don't do a lot of blasting, but yeah, that's really the only way, you're going to get inside those pits, with rust and stuff like that, is to blast it out. But yeah, really anything that'll just get in there and dig that stuff out. Again, some don't recommend the sand anymore because of the silica and stuff like that. But just for a small area, probably about anything would work. That has some. They've got all kinds of stuff now. All kinds of different products. Shells and this type of thing to clean with. So I'd have to just do a little research on that. Thanks for the channel and videos. Well, you're welcome, man. Thanks for watching. That's what I appreciate you all for watching and getting on here. I've been doing these for a long time, not constantly, but I think since 2008 or something like that. And get some free stretch of time, I'll do some, and then maybe get busy with work and things like that, and kind of get caught up for a little bit. But yeah, I've been doing these videos off and on, and really, and getting all these comments and seeing the comments that that I've helped you. That's what really motivates me. Of course, I get some dumb comments sometimes too, but anybody on YouTube does. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end this stream, and I appreciate you all for watching. And I'm going to try to do this every Saturday at 7. So, Friday, every Friday at 7. I think that's kind of where the polls led to that I did online on the YouTube channel. So I'm going to kind of lean towards that, and still be doing some how-to videos and some other videos as well. But I'm going to try to do these live Q&As every Friday at 7. So anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.